2018 had some really great anime to watch, and I would hope that 2019 brings us equally great anime as well. It seems like that is going to be the case because the first 3 shows that I've chosen for the 2019 winter season have all my attention. Welcome to the Anime Hole. The first slot in the winter 2019 season for me is filled up by a comedy. Of course it would be. You guys know my taste already. I need my weird anime shenanigans. This one is Kaguya-sama, Love is War, so let's talk about it.
Allow me, Mr. Oh, Mr. 知らされるほど切ない二人だけの危ないゲーム Love is war, love is war, love is war.
Man, I just want to let that opening linger for a bit because it's so good. I know I'm not the first one to liken it to a Bond theme, but it's the immediate thought that comes to mind, especially with the latter half of the visuals really trying for that 70s spy flick vibe. And apparently the guy who sings the opening is known as the king of love songs in Japan. Add that voice to those horns and melody and you got yourself a wonderful jazzy, soulful, soft rock bossa nova song? There's a lot happening here and it's great.
Love is war, love is war, love is war.
But enough about that. What about the actual show itself? Well, Kaguya was another show recommended to me by a person who, at this point, I fully trust 100% with anime recommendations. 2 of my 3 top anime last year were recommended by them. So that sets a high bar that Kaguya is totally hitting. The premise of the show is a battle of wits between 2 characters, Miyuki Shirogane, the student council president, and Kaguya, the student council vice president. But this battle of wits isn't for any internal political gain. No, in fact, our 2 characters have feelings for each other, but they're too prideful to admit it. It's actually a battle to try to get the other person to confess first. That sounds like a great starting point for some escalating anime shenanigans, which I love, of course. So it was a little surprising that the first episode of Kaguya didn't grab me immediately. The main characters initially come off as very stuck up and elite, which I know now is the point. It's what makes them the perfect foils for their own crazy schemes. But to me that didn't really come across that well in the first episode. It initially felt like a barrier keeping me from connecting with these characters. That barrier comes down quickly after the initial introduction though. The calm tension that made the first episode feel a bit flat ends up being a vital aspect of the comedy uses to its advantage. Lots of shots of characters trying to keep a straight face while secretly losing their fucking minds in their internal monologues. And that is only lifted up even higher by the narrator.
今は
Monster 童貞なのである
The narrator simultaneously fills the role of an Arrested Development-esque observer chiming in with more context for the character's situations, and also a sports announcer when things get intense, appropriately raising his voice to fit a dramatic face-down between Kaguya and Shirogane.
海 vs 山太古より争われていた絶対的対立
And every episode ends with a scorecard with the narrator announcing the winner of the episode's Battle of Wits. Though no matter which of the 2 comes out ahead, Chika, the student council secretary, always is the true winner in the end, at least to me. Her obliviousness to the romantic tension between Kaguya and Shirogane makes for a great wild card. The show has also gotten to the point where it's endearing me a lot to the characters, breaking down that prideful elitist mask that they wear at school and showing the normal anxiety-ridden love-struck teenagers that lie underneath. This is especially true of Kaguya, who at this point has had more peeks into her personal life than Shirogane has. Hopefully the show starts diving into his life soon as well. I'm excited to see where this goes. The past few episodes I've watched have gotten genuine, audible laughter from me. Watching these characters try so hard to outdo each other only to end up right where they started is really entertaining. But as much as I talk about comedies on the Anime Hole, this is the only one I'm watching this season. These other 2 shows are genres that I don't really have a lot of experience with in anime. So let's talk about a thriller, The Promised Neverland. The Promised Neverland is gonna be a little difficult to talk about because there's a thing that happens very early in the series. Halfway through the first episode, in fact. So I guess it's not so much a spoiler as it is an essential piece of describing what this show is, but I wholeheartedly believe that if you go in watching this without knowing what the thing is, as I did, there's a lot more impact in the reveal. An impact strong enough that'll make you want to keep watching the show immediately, no questions asked. So I'm gonna try my best to avoid talking about the thing for as long as I can, and instead talk about The Promised Neverland in the context of a different piece of media that isn't anime.
maybe none of us really understand what we've lived through, or feel we've had enough time.
Never Let Me Go is a book and a movie that share some similar themes with The Promised Neverland. The book was written by Kazuo Ishiguro, and the movie was adapted by Alex Garland and directed by Mark Romanek. I saw and read both of these back in high school and really enjoyed them. So when starting Neverland, I immediately got Never Let Me Go vibes from the first few scenes. So much so that I had to look it up and make sure I wasn't going crazy, and one of the first results was a Reddit post of someone making the same connection. Neverland and Never Let Me Go share the same setup of following the lives of a group of kids living at a boarding school/orphanage. In both stories, you quickly get a sense that there's something not quite right with this place, an unsettling vibe coming off the caretakers and the facility itself. In the case of Never Let Me Go, you find out maybe a third of the way through the book that the kids are clones being raised for the sole purpose of becoming organ donors when they get older. And the story goes from there to being a coming-of-age character drama. In the case of Neverland, the hook is the thing that I don't want to talk about, but I will say that it's not the same thing in Never Let Me Go. It's something a lot darker, a lot more sinister, and maybe more in line with something you'd expect out of an anime, I guess? That reveal turns Neverland right into the thriller or light horror space more than a coming-of-age drama. There might even be some action on the horizon based off the OP of the series, which, by the way, is also great. Just some top-notch OPs this season. In fact, because it's so good, let's just play a little more of it now. That saxophone is killer! But music aside, I think what Neverland is absolutely nailing is the tone and mood of this world. Every shot sells the ominous vibe of living within this house. The way they frame some of the interactions between the children and the caretakers is absolutely chilling. And the animators are doing an incredible job at showing the utter sense of dread in these children's faces when shit hits the fan. Neverland has me at the edge of my seat every week. I was able to get through the segment completely talking around the thing, which means I didn't get a chance to talk about our main characters and some of the high-level mind games they have to play to deal with the situation they're in. Hopefully the things I did get to say were just enough to get you interested, because I think this show is definitely worth keeping an eye on. Now, on to the last show I'm watching this season, which is another show in a genre that I haven't really toyed around with. In this case, it's the supernatural and action, and that show is Dororo. Another show, another great OP this season. Hot damn. But unlike the song says, the party is in fact not over. It's only just begun, because Dororo might be my favorite thing I'm watching this season. That's a very tentative might, as are all my thoughts on these shows in this episode, because this is all based off of 3 episodes and they're all first impressions, but Dororo is off to a really strong start. Dororo is set in a historical, fictionalized version of Japan where demons and ghouls roaming around is just the reality of this world. Our titular character is a young boy who comes across Hyakimaru, a blind, deaf, and mute young man wearing a doll mask who has swords for arms sheathed behind his prosthetic limbs. He hunts these demons that terrorize townfolks and the locals. In the first episode, he saves Dororo from one and they start traveling together, but not before something strange happens. Hyakimaru's mask falls as he hunches over and we see his skin regrow around his actual face. You see, because of some circumstances involving demonic pacts, Hyakimaru was born without any skin, limbs, eyes, etc. He was left for dead, but he survived and is hunting down demons with his ability to see auras. Killing one of the 12 major demons with whom the pact was made restores a part of Hyakimaru's body. Okay, you got all that? Good, because that's not the actual meat of the show. I just needed to describe all of that to get to this point. What makes Dororo so gripping is not the action sequences, it's the storytelling. I was afraid Dororo would turn out to be a simple Monster of the Week show. Hyakimaru would find a new demon every episode and spend the majority of the time fighting it in a cool, well-animated action sequence. But that's not this show. In fact, the demon fights, while still looking good, are a minor part of the episode. They happen really fast, almost as if to get out of the way of the real focus of the show, giving the viewer a look into the sad state of this war-torn era. The majority of an episode focuses on an interpersonal story. The story of the doctor who gave Hyakimaru his prosthetics. The story of a town doing something sinister to earn money. the story of a young girl finding her brother who she thought was lost in the war. But none of these are happy stories. If the color palette of the show didn't tip you off, everything has a hint of tragedy. And I love how Dororo is really putting those stories at the forefront of its narrative. This is also Dororo's second anime adaptation. There was one that happened many years ago that I never saw or even heard of. I'm not really going to compare the two because I have really no knowledge of the previous adaptation, but just from the outside looking in, this adaptation seems a lot more grim. The only other experience I have with a show that similarly takes place in a historical setting, has a wandering samurai, and focuses more on individual stories than its action is Rurouni Kenshin, one of my favorite shows ever. So it only makes sense that I'm drawn to Dororo because the director of the Kenshin anime is also directing this show, and he and the team are really nailing it. The pacing has this emotional weight to it that really gets you invested. And I think that's why it's currently my favorite of the season, because it's the show with a tone that I haven't really engaged with since I started watching anime regularly, and I just want to watch more. And that's my winter anime schedule. 3 shows that I'm really enjoying, 3 OPs that I find to be really catchy, and even some shows that I didn't mention that I'm keeping an eye on to watch in between seasons once they're finished. I'm looking at you, Mob Psycho. As usual, streaming links are in the description, as well as a link to my Anilist account. Also, as I mentioned in the 2019 update video, there won't be an episode of the Anime Hole for every season in 2019. I'll only do one if there's something really substantial I want to talk about in any particular season. Hopefully this will free me up some time so I can maybe turn the Anime Hole into a more expansive show, something that's not just recommending new shows for people to watch. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.